Hello everyone, Adam here, and today I will be talking about Bloomberg Team's recent game, The Medium, including discussing the ending that leaves most of the stuff that we've experienced throughout this incredible adventure in the air. But before we begin, remember to like, subscribe, and consider joining my channel. There is a join button below, and I would appreciate it if you decided to take consideration in supporting smaller YouTubers. In addition, over 90% of my viewers are unsubscribed, and I'm trying to fix that. So let's get on to the video. Medium starts with a dream of a young girl being chased through the dark woods and is cornered on a pier. A man appears and shoots the girl, and we are shown our protagonist. Marianne discusses the dream while seemingly talking to someone, providing a cup for herself and another for someone else we do not see. We then dart to Poland during a moody day as rain saturates the area. Marianne speaks about how she returned home to bury her father by preparing his corpse. We learn from walking around the apartment that Marianne was adopted by a funeral director named Jack. Jack was a religious man who knew of Marianne's gifts to speak to the dead. Marianne is a medium, and during this adventure she's well aware of her powers, using them throughout her life to give peace to those who died and need to pass on. We learn that Jack died after a surgery he required, was a photographer with his own darkroom, and was even part of the Solidarity movement, an anti-bureaucratic movement that advanced workers' rights and social changes in the 1980s. We also get small details about Marianne, such as her constantly getting in trouble at school and even having severe burn marks at a young age where she was comatose. Jack was a loving father who accepted Marianne's gifts and always offered encouragement. This is especially shown after Marianne's finalization of Jack's corpse, only to be taken to the spiritual world called the Other World. Here, Marianne sees Jack's spirit, and Marianne attempts to help him move on. The game displays this in two ways. On one side is Marianne in the real world, and the other is in the Other World. This perspective highlights how everyone else sees Marianne when using her gift, and the other side is what is really happening in the Other World. It also shows us how the real world and this other world are connected even if we don't see it. Jack was dedicated to his job and raising Marianne, as he is seen looking for his notebook to continue working, but instantly becomes distracted when he sees Marianne is crying, instantly putting all his attention towards Marianne. It's clear that the people in the other world are not aware that they are dead, as Jack makes mention of the surgery that would kill him, and Marianne shows how she helps people like Jack move on, not directly telling them of their death, but instead helping them move past what is keeping them here. In Jack's case, it was his work and his love for being a father to Marianne. Marianne tells Jack to forget about his work, and despite being worried about her living her life, encourages him that she can take care of herself even if he's gone. With that closure, Jack moves on, and Marianne is left distressed, having said her last goodbyes to her dad. After this difficult exchange, Marianne is called out of the blue by someone who calls her by name. A man named Thomas explains that he knows of Marianne's gifts and dream that she never told anyone else. He explains that he can give her the answer she needs, but she needs to head to the Niwa resort, and warns her about a light going out and the dark coming. Marianne decides to act on this and drives to the resort using her motorcycle. When inside, Marianne starts to notice strong spiritual connections to the resort. The resort was created by the government but closed, and a rumored story about a massacre was created to keep people out. However, when heading inside, Marianne starts to see remnants of moments soaked in misery, and she is forced into the other world. Apparently, Marianne doesn't have complete control of her gifts and can be forced into the other world at random times, each time triggered by a quick succession of headaches. It's also here that we learn of spirit wells, strong energy sources left behind by powerful memories that Marianne can use. She uses the energy to restart an old power box, showing that anything that happens in the other world happens in the real world. In addition, both forms of Marianne have to have clear paths, and if one is blocked by an obstacle in one world, so is the other. Essentially, Marianne is two people, but acting as one. When heading deeper into the forest, Marianne notices a dead deer rotting from the inside out, almost like something has drained it of all its energy. When arriving at the resort, Marianne uses the tools around to break into the resort, but learns that the rumors of Niwa may not be rumors. The outside has powerful echoes, memories that latched onto objects that Marianne can listen to, but when inside, she learns that the rumored massacre was entirely true, with bloody clothes everywhere. Inside there's plenty of promotional images of great food, performances, and more, but it's here that Marianne meets Sadness. This girl, like Jack, is unaware that she is dead. Marianne bonds with the child and learns that she only remembers very little, only piecing together small bits of information. She agrees to help Marianne locate Thomas, but he's upstairs. But in the real world, Marianne is unable to travel upstairs due to the damage to the stairs. Since much of the Niwa resort has been left to rot, much of the structure has been fallen apart, requiring her to use the elevator. Marianne reaches the second floor, but is attacked by moths. It's in the other world, but she learns how to use a new ability called the Spirit Shield that she was completely unaware of. Heading deeper into the resort, Marianne learns of a nurse named Ursula, who was taking care of a man named Mr. Tarkovsky. Marianne can revive memories if they're connected strongly to a certain item. However, we learned that Tarkovsky did not share Ursula's feelings of love and only saw her as a friend, causing Ursula to fall into a deep depression. Unable to cross another barrier, Marianne attempts to reconstruct the memories of the location to generate enough spiritual energy. When peering into a bathroom and seeing a tub full of blood, Marianne is startled by a figure. This is actually Tarkovsky. He had strong feelings of suicide, and because of this manifested into this type of palpable memory that Marianne's able to see, and we'll see later on why he had these strong thoughts of suicide, and locates a razor. We also witnessed that Tarkovsky took a turn for the worst and it was wheelchair bound, requiring 24/7 aid, which Ursula gladly did as she called him her love. However, these memories are out of order and we'll learn what happened to this man later on in the game. Marianne also grabs the same sunflower that Tarkovsky gave to Ursula. Using the knife, Marianne's real-world self can enter the area and uses the sunflower to create the spirit well fully functional. Able to access Thomas's office, we learn that he was the manager of Niwa, and Sadness appears again. Still having trouble remembering things, she remembers an old man being here recently. Despite Sadness's worry about the office, Marianne enters and sees Sadness was right. Marianne locates some historical documents about Niwa's construction, and that the office was recently used and where Thomas called her. Locating a small key, Marianne learns that the grandfather clock is a junction point, a powerful item that can alter reality in the other world and relive memories linked to it. She also finds salt is everywhere, which will be important later on. Using the clock, Marianne learns Thomas was in great distress about something coming and opens the back door to a hidden room. Marianne is trapped when she enters the room, but decides to look around. Using the tools inside, she attempts to develop a photo and discovers that Thomas was trying to keep something from getting out, using salt and other supernatural rituals found in a series of books. Marianne develops the photo and finds out it is a recent photo of her and Thomas has been keeping track of her. But the projector also turns on. In true It fashion, we see the projector flash between slides showing a child and some figure trying to break loose along with photos of Marianne, before Marianne is forced into the other world and is attacked by a demonic creature. She runs and evades the creature as it shouts foreshadowing information in the dark in the most disturbing of ways. I mean, just listen to this.
Don't leave me here. Alone. Naked. Let me try you on.
Oh God, no!
After evading the creature, we're darted back into the present day where Marianne is still discussing everything that transpired to this mysterious figure, discussing how she got used to her abilities, but when venturing throughout Niwa, she got more questions than answers, especially when it came to the demonic figure, who Thomas was, how he knew about her. Everything just seemed to be falling apart. When Marianne wakes up after falling from evading the creature, we see she's back in the lobby and she wants to run, but she can't because she needs answers and Sadness needs her to help her move on. Sadness starts to direct Marianne from the other world and tells her of Richard in the day room, but she needs bolt cutters to get inside. Heading deeper, Marianne finds more evidence of Niwa's massacre as dried blood and evidence of the police investigation is presented with abandoned resources and echoes revealing what happened that puzzled the investigators as they questioned the people inside the resort, with Nurse Ursula apparently being responsible based on a report from a worker named Frank. Marianne finds some bolt cutters, but they're out of reach. Sadness reconnects with Marianne using a mirror, but we also see that the mall is hunting her. The Maul being the demon that we saw earlier, and it's continuously haunting Marianne throughout this adventure. Sadness attempts to guide Marianne as effectively as possible using a trail of butterflies. She's able to discover a series of echoes from Sadness's past. We learned that her name was Lily, and she was playing with some kids who locked her in a locker when playing hide and seek. Marianne discovers a cat statue in a drawing showing a girl peering into the other world with a cat. Using the statue and the mirror, Marianne is able to cross into the other world fully and not split between two worlds like we saw previously. This is shocking for Marianne. When in the other world, Marianne discovers Bernard, a friend of Lily. He's trapped in the hotel and literally tethered, unable to move on. Marianne needs to locate his mask and does so, allowing Bernard to move on and grab the second cat statue, but the Maul discovers her. This is one of the Maul's victims. He possessed the boy and most likely used Bernard to kill. When he was killed, eventually he was trapped in the hotel, unable to move on. Running through the mirror, the Maul somehow passes from the other world into the real world, with Marianne having to hide from the creature once again. Marianne avoids the monster and finds out a old USSR soldier was looking for someone who will be important later, but we have no idea when this was recorded. Heading into the other world, Marianne discovers two more victims of the Maul, unable to move on after being possessed by the creature. Marianne must discover their name and find their face to move on. Vivienne was a gifted ballerina whose promotional images we can see throughout the hotel, who was stalked by her manager and used by her mother, but was close to her sister. Using echoes and items left behind, Marianne discovers her true name is Tori, and she was possessed by the Maul in her room where she eventually died. The next victim is a workaholic named Nicholas. After finding out his name and mask, the Maul finds Marianne again and she must run. She returns the mask and is able to obtain the bolt cutters by the infirmary. It's here that Marianne learns this is where Ursula was possessed by the Maul and killed Tarkovsky, speaking how she wanted him to feel the pain she felt when he rejected her, showcasing that the Maul tracks down people who've caused great distress and amplifies them so they'll act on them. With the bolt cutters in hand, Marianne gains access to the day room and reunites with Sadness. She starts to remember more information such as the Maul's creation and how it possessed everyone one by one. Marianne then helps Sadness remember more about Richard and runs off, unable to face the memories of what he did to her. When inside the day room, Marianne learns that Richard and Thomas were close. Thomas lost his parents during the Warsong Uprising, and Richard took an interest in Thomas's artistic abilities, using him as a type of muse to reignite his own waning creativity. He took a similar interest in Sadness and was working with her when he was offered a chance to stay at Niwa by Thomas after being kicked out of his university job. We also learned that Thomas was the one who reported the incident that caused Richard to become wheelchair bound to the police. We would also see that Ursula taking care of him full time was her own choice, and eventually he would die at the hands of the nurse, where she gets possessed by the Maul and kills him. Heading into the final room, we see that Richard had an unhealthy obsession with Lily and did something extreme. After the final memory cuts off, Marianne has a vision of Thomas, who is revealed to be a medium. He recalls his spiritual half, who, unlike Marianne, has a unique personality. The two work together to find out that Richard did and had an obsessive relationship with Lily, and finds out all of this through a book hidden in Richard's office. Unable to handle the fact that Richard, someone he looked to as a father, harmed his daughter, Lily, Thomas completely beats him into submission, eventually entering into Richard's demonic world. We also learned that from Richard begging Thomas for mercy that he did contemplate suicide because these desires have been part of him for his entire life, and he just didn't know how to deal with them. Which is why Marianne saw that figure in the bathtub that seemingly committed suicide. Kowalski didn't commit suicide, but he had strong desire to do so because of these dark desires that were a part of him. While we've only been given a glimpse of what mediums can do, we've seen that Marianne has the ability to allow lost souls to move on through her help, but through Richard's perspective, we'll see that Thomas has a much more dangerous ability that extends beyond that. With Thomas's spirit heading into Richard's demon realm where it houses his most darkest thoughts. Learning that Richard's father died in World War II, his stepfather was abusive towards him, and his mother, and his close relationship with a young girl named Rose. Rose was Jewish and in hiding during World War II, so Richard would bring her supplies, but when the Nazis started to occupy Poland and they were unable to deal with their stepfather anymore, Richard's mother framed the stepfather for harboring Jews, and the Nazis hung him, but in doing so also exposed Rose, and she was killed. This tormented childhood caused a demon to manifest in Richard called the Child Eater, resulting in Richard's horrible acts towards children, specifically Lily. Thomas destroys Richard's inner demons by breaking his soul, but in doing so turns Richard into a vegetable. So we see that mediums do have extremely powerful abilities. Not only can they cross into the other world, but they can essentially exorcise demons from people that manifest through dark desires. But in doing so, the results can be extreme. This could be because Richard was extremely old and frail, and that's why this just pushed him over the edge, or it could be that Thomas just felt no mercy for what Richard did to his child. Returning to the present, we see that the Child Eater is still alive despite Richard being dead, and explains how Richard tried to beat the demon himself and blames Lily for what happened as it revived those dark desires. Without Richard, the Child Eater is stuck in darkness and asks Marianne to free him, but she refuses. As a type of mercy killing, the Child Eater then begs her to kill him. Before dying, he tells her of the Red House, and Marianne discovers a photo of her at Niwa and decides to head to the Red House, looking for more answers of what exactly is happening here. Marianne finds an echo from the same USSR agent that she found in the infirmary, and more dead animals rotting from the inside out, almost like they've all been drained. Marianne finds a dog who takes her to her former master, now dead. Turns out it's Frank from Niwa who gave the report about Nurse Ursula killing those people, but he never left the resort because he had nowhere else to go. This is also hinted at prior to this event through collectibles. It turns out that he has the same symptoms as the dead animals, with his body seemingly being rotted from the inside out. The dog flees as the mall appears, speaking how it used Francis, the people at Niwa, and even the animals as meat suits, but they always ended up dying because they could not handle his presence. Turns out normal bodies just can't sustain it, and it needs Marianne as she's the only one a body that can sustain its demonic possession because she is a powerful medium. Marianne flees as the mall begs Marianne to wear her body. I'm serious, just listen to this incredibly disturbing chase scene.
Try you on.
Broken record. Fuck.
Please. Don't run. Skin suit. Pretty little skin suit. Tiny little skin suit. Don't leave me here!
Marianne is able to escape the creature by heading into an old WW2 bunker as the bridge collapses, but the mall does not give up the chase. It uses memories and manifestations of Jack to try and break Marianne's morale, but she's too powerful for that. Marianne uses a generator to kill it, noticing that the creature does not like lightning and high electricity, so it's very creative of how she deals with the creature. Eventually, Marianne reunites with Sadness and sees that she does remember what happened. Marianne tries to help Sadness move on, but Sadness tells her about the monster and how it will never stop chasing Marianne, but most importantly that it's Marianne who needs to remember. Marianne goes into Thomas's tool shed and learns that the people knew that he was a medium. When finally reaching the red house, Marianne learns that the man set the house on fire before diving into another vision of Thomas. Here we learn that the man's name is Henry and he's working for the USSR. We learn that the Nazis used Thomas's gift, but when the Red Army took over Poland, Thomas was locked up. Thomas escaped by using his gifts and was being hunted down since. What exposed him was when he used his power on Richard. Henry burned down Thomas's home to force him to use his power and expose more secrets about him. Thomas does and heads into Henry's world, learning of his dedication to the USSR, alienating his wife and wheel-bound son, and dedicating every minute to his work. Spirit Thomas is hunted by the Hound, a demonic human dog-like creature, as it attempts to gain access to Henry's spirit. He does, but unlike Richard, Henry feels no guilt and isn't vulnerable like Richard. The Hound is him, and Thomas's spirit is trapped. But at this moment, Henry stumbles, and Thomas gets the upper hand, freeing himself and killing Henry, but noticing that his house is completely burned and his children most likely killed. Back in the present, Marianne remembers that Thomas is her father, but the Hound reappears. Just like the child eater with Richard, despite the person being dead, the demon will continue to live. So the Hound starts to mock Marianne, but Marianne attempts to get answers if Sadness is dead or alive. The Hound attacks Marianne before giving a solid answer, just mocking Marianne further, but she uses her power to fully destroy the Hound. Unlike Richard's demons, the Hound does not go gently. Entering the house, Marianne reconstructs her lost memories, learning that Lily was her sister and she was tormented by them all. Their mother died in childbirth when giving birth to Marianne, and Lily blamed her for it. The Mall convinced Lily to leave Marianne in the house when it was on fire, causing her coma and burns, which was mentioned at the beginning of the game if you explored Marianne's room, of how she had burns and was in a coma. When returning the mask, the Mall can be heard speaking, and you'll notice they're called calm, joy, and wonder, things that are the opposite of what the demon is. We also learned that the demon offered to save Marianne during the fire along with Lily, but only if she set it free, which is what she did. Mott's attack and the mirror breaks. Marianne then heads downstairs to find a heavy security door. Through echoes, we find out that Thomas left Marianne at the hospital despite Lily wondering where she was, and Thomas ominously did something to Lily. When searching the basement, Marianne learns of the 10th anniversary of Thomas and his wife, with the wife giving him a pocket watch. Using this information to unlock the fallout shelter, but is chased by the Mall, who states that it was trapped by Lily and Thomas inside the same facility. When inside, Marianne learns that the shelter was built by the Nazis and found by the Russians, but kept secret so no one knew about it. Thomas built his home on it for personal use. In a classic Resident Evil style puzzle, Marianne must redirect the water tanks as the Mall lies in wait, naming its victims and how Thomas escaped, which is why Salt was in the office when we went into his manager office at Niwa. When inside the central tank where the Mall is waiting for her, Marianne uses a pool of water and an electrical wire to fry the demon again and heads into the fallout shelter. She sees that Thomas was recently there and that he kept Lily in a bunker full of clothes, books, and the entire bunker was lined with salt. He even had a constant injection of a solution of sodium chloride attached to Lily to weaken the Mall, confirming that she was the demon's host, like the Hound with Henry and Child Eater with Richard. We also find that Thomas worked night and day to try and send the monster away without hurting Lily. After supplying power and fixing the mirror that will allow her to travel to the other world, Marianne encounters Thomas's spirit. It turns out that despite the Hound having him cornered, he was trapped in Henry's world and was unable to leave, but thanks to Marianne sending the Hound away, he was able to walk out. However, he doesn't know if his other half is alive, as the spirit can't feel him anymore. This ropes the entire game together from the beginning scene, with Thomas's spirit being the person Marianne has been talking to this entire time to get him caught up with everything that happened. The spirit confirms that Lily was kept here and the shelter was built for Thomas so he could be alone, since the other world does not exist in that soul room. This is why, unlike Marianne, Thomas's spirit are different, and how he can act completely independent, unlike Marianne, who can only separate from her spirit for a limited of time. It's also here that Thomas's spirit exposes why Thomas did what he did. Despite Lily and Marianne being extremely powerful mediums, they're still subject to the same laws that would eventually create the Hound and the Child Eater in Henry and Richard. When you go through traumatic events throughout your life, which leads to things like rage, anger, violence, such as when Lily blamed Marianne for the death of her mother. However, the spirit reveals that when Richard hurt her, this is when the Maul was awakened, and because of this, he could not contain it anymore. When the fire occurred, the demon was set free by Lily in order for her to save her sister, and because of this, Thomas had to take drastic action. He sealed Lily away in order to prevent the Maul from escaping again because what happened at Niwa. At the same time, he allowed Jack to raise Marianne, knowing that if she forgot about her past, she would not generate the same things that would lead to Lily falling down this path. And considering how well Jack raised Marianne, it was probably for the best. Regardless, Thomas still kept tabs on her and made sure that she was okay because he was a dad that loved his children very much. The spirit confirms that Lily is alive and is by the lake, but the Maul is coming. Thomas decides to hold it off despite Marianne's objection. He forces her out and she travels to the lake to find Lily, reliving the dream that she's had all her life. Lily confirms that she made the deal with the demon to free it in exchange for saving Marianne when Henry set the fire. The demon then went to Niwa, possessing people and causing the massacre. Thomas tried to keep Lily and the monster hidden while he worked to try and free her, but the Maul got out. It then hunted Thomas to try and possess his body because Marianne isn't the only medium available and he can't possess his own host body, so he needed either Thomas or Marianne. Lily makes sense of the dream that Marianne has been having, saying it's not a dream, but a vision. Taking out Henry's gun, Lily asks Marianne to kill her, severing the Maul to her and sadness, making it vulnerable to death. But Lily can't do it since the Maul is part of her and won't let her do it. Lily confirms that as long as she's alive, the Maul will keep reviving itself. That's why the Hound and Child Eater could not revive themselves. Once their hosts were gone, they were left in darkness, and it had to be a medium to take care of them in order for them to find peace, essentially, or get completely wiped out. The Maul finds the sister and attempts to take possession of Marianne, but Marianne points the gun at her head. The Maul cannot possess Lily anymore and needs Marianne. Without her, the Maul is stuck, but if she doesn't kill Lily, the demon will continue to live and Lily will be trapped forever at Niwa, unable to leave because of the creature's attachment to her. The game ends with a gunshot, not knowing who Marianne chose to kill.
You can't only save every butterfly.
In the after credits, we see what appears to be Thomas grabbing his watch and a large wall with a heavily lit and long crack. So, who did Marianne choose? Well, unfortunately, there's no way of knowing. Marianne could choose suicide, as she stated early on in the game that she once considered it, and strongly does not want to kill her sister. She still loves her dearly. But if she doesn't end Lily's life, she'll be trapped regardless. It'll be a fate worse than death. She'll still be trapped in that bunker. She'll be unable to leave, and she'll be stuck with the creature forever as it attempts to draw more victims towards it. As we saw in Niwa, the entire facility is full of graffiti, which means people still come into the facility. And since the creature can still walk around the entire resort, it'll still possess animals and anyone foolish enough to get too close. However, the credits are a little more informative. This is clearly the other world, and it would be prudent to assume that this is Thomas's spirit, as we never saw a human enter this world. But look at his clothes. The spirits always have a gray coloration or a distinct look when entering the new world, like with Marianne with white hair. But here the clothes have color to them, and they look just like regular Thomas. We never see that he was killed. Instead, we see that he took precautions to try and avoid being possessed by the mall. And even though Thomas's spirit cannot feel him, the developers put this profound detail between the spirit version of Marianne and Thomas to showcase which character is which. So it's likely that Thomas locked himself away in the other world in an attempt to evade the mall from possessing him. As with his spirit half locked in Henry's world, he could not defend himself against the mall or defeat the Hound because he had no powers. And what better way to hide from the demon than in the other world? And we don't have a sound conclusion that humans can't enter the other world. In fact, Marianne was fully discovering new abilities as she traveled throughout Niwa, and we see that Thomas does have access to abilities that perhaps he can access. And again, he has locked away his spiritual half, as we saw when he first contacted him when trying to find out about Richard's hidden secrets that he was kept in the dark. So maybe he did not feel him, but maybe he also doesn't understand the full extent of his human form. After all, they are two separate people, judging by the way they interact to one another, as opposed to Marianne's spiritual form and human form, which are linked directly one another. It's not the same case with Thomas, so my hypothesis is that the human Thomas has an ability that the spirit Thomas is unaware of, and that's why he was unable to sense him. He was looking for him in the real world when he should have been looking for him in the spirit world. It also does fit the original phone call about the light running out. He likely went to this area with a large amount of spiritual energy to keep them all at bay, as the creature hated the light. The reason his spirit could not sense him was likely due to Thomas sealing himself and ensuring that no one can find him. What better way to remain hidden than making sure even your most closest allies cannot find you? Instead, he relied on Marianne to make the choices to stop them all that he could never make. He was still a father, and he loved his daughters deeply. Can you imagine what he would have to do if he had to kill one of his daughters? It's just unrealistic for him. He loved them dearly, and it's unlikely that he could go through with it, even though he basically forced his daughter to make a decision he could never make. At least that's my theory about what happened in the ending credits. And that will bring us to the end of this Ending Explained. The Medium is a terrific horror title from Bloomberg Team, and it's their best game so far. The quality acting, musical scores, narrative, and the monster design is absolutely amazing. Yeah, the gameplay isn't great. It's just a series of linear levels and bland exploration elements. It's basically Resident Evil if it was toned down to basically 10% of Resident Evil's puzzle aspects, but the adventure was such a grip and tale that all these elements were easily pushed aside for this incredible experience. I highly recommend the title, and it is available on PC and Xbox Series X through Game Pass, but I would recommend that you purchase it for the developers because they deserve it and they did a great job. So put in the comments below what game you want me to explain next, what I got wrong, what I got right, and, you know, maybe you'll consider subscribing, joining if you want to add more support to my channel, and if you just leave a like, that's more than enough. Till next time, everyone, thanks for joining me, and stay awesome.
The Niwa Workers Resort. Right off the bat, I could feel there was something off about that